Hello and welcome to another episode of Cybermasters. Thank you for coming. We've been going at this for about 6 months. We've had a lot of exciting shows. Again, tonight we have another great exciting show with our special guest, Charles Ribando. He'll introduce himself in a moment. Remember, this show is where we take complicated technology conversations and break it down where everyone can understand it. The world is made up of so much technology, and everybody has such complicated conversations about it. Our goal is so everyone understands it, right? So you can take what you hear on the show, bring it to the dinner table, bring it to, your next outing, and not seem like you can't be part of it because you've never heard of it. So on today's show, I'm very proud to have brought my good friend and colleague, Charles Ribando. Just one quick thing, I do use an alias name. That's to protect myself against the conversations I'm having every day. People who've known me for a long time find it pretty funny that I have this interesting alias. I recommend using an alias. I think it's very positive, especially online.
So
to operate with an alias.
So I should be using an alias, you saying?
Well, but you're so famous, it would be hard to disconnect from that. I'm not famous, so it doesn't really matter at all, right? But again, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about police work and how is predictive police work going to be advanced with technology, machine learning. What has artificial intelligence got to do with it? And then ultimately, what's happening in cybercrime and the long-term effects it has on our business, as well as police work and crime in general. Before we introduce Chuck, he has been a major advocate for technology compared to many people in this industry who don't get it, who don't want to get it. He's an individual who jumps in with both feet. And I think that's what law enforcement needs. I think that's what the future of policing is to marry extreme understanding and knowledge of their field work and allow technology in and work with the right people. So I'm very excited to have Chuck here today to go down those roads and talk about this for about a half hour. And, how has technology been accepted where you're open to other colleagues to use technology in this way. So Charles, please, you have a consulting firm. Tell us about yourself.
I do. I have a consulting firm slash private investigative firm that I started about 4 years ago after a long career in the NYPD and the Nassau County District Attorney's Office. I went out on my own and started my own firm. It's half investigations, half consulting, but mostly it's consulting on law enforcement issues.
Okay. And what kind of projects can you talk about? Are they national? Are they local? Are they international?
Some of them are international that I can't speak about.
Is it difficult to deal with international law regarding policing?
It's not really, because I have, I should have said before, I spent some time in the Joint Terrorist Task Force, so I have many international contacts around the world. So knowing that and my experience in it, wasn't really that much of an adjustment.
Okay. Interesting. Are the laws...
You need to know, though, what is different from our laws and what's not, so you don't insult anyone.
Yeah, I was going to go there. Not only that, but I assume mannerisms can fall into place here to different government if you
100%
act or do something different.
I did a.
Could you move just a little closer to the mic?
Yeah, I did I spoke at a conference in Armenia with prosecutors and police regarding public corruption.
Okay.
Which I clearly had to tone down because public corruption here is a little bit different than public corruption in some of the foreign countries.
Really? Okay, got it.
So I needed to, I set up a PowerPoint, but obviously dealing with the local law enforcement and local prosecutors, what would have been considered insulting and not to criticize any other government,
right.
But what we're used to in our country might not be well received in other countries. So
does it change? Does it change with the evolution of their governments, and how do people in law enforcement keep track of their changing governments and the way they want things?
I don't know how they do it. I just could say that when you go to another government, and I've been to many countries, and every government is different on how they police,
Yes.
how they contain law enforcement. So you really have to adjust to it when you get there, because what the progress, and this is not a criticism of any other country, but
Sure.
Because I've worked very closely with Scotland Yard, and they are very far advanced compared to some of the rest
Scotland
of the
Yard is one of the more advanced
Scotland Yard,
groups.
yes, in the UK, Scotland Yard is the investigative body for the UK, and they are very far advanced, and I've made
Really?
some very close contacts with them.
Oh, wow.
But
that's
you might go
interesting.
to kind of like a third world country, and you have to adjust to their laws and their mannerisms.
Mhm, mhm.
And again, you can't push you can suggest ideas,
Yeah.
but you can't push them on certain other countries.
Interesting. I worked with a guy who did mixed martial arts, and he was one of our trainers, and he worked with the Austrian Cobras anti-terrorist team, and some incredible stuff with those groups. So not only Scotland Yard, but all over Europe, there must be pretty advanced
Yeah,
teams in
Yeah.
France as well, right?
yeah.
Do they work together? Are they a team, or are they completely separated?
Well, no, they're separated. I mean, I can't talk too much
Of course,
about
sure.
about what their interactions are, because a lot of it is
It's sensitive information.
well
so-
covert. Yeah,
Sure,
so
got it. Well, I found it
um,
really interesting. I thought that one of the things that I learned, again, just practicing mixed martial arts, that one of the myths or videos we saw, that using a Steyerog weapon was like the final round to become like a specialist in the Austrian terrorist force. And you had to shoot 7 targets on a moving helicopter. It seemed pretty tough test to overcome, you know what I mean?
yeah,
That's pretty cool. One of the other things that we heard well, obviously in Europe, things are so much different, right? Of how they police there. They always talked about Oktoberfest being a really crazy scene there, where everyone got together and just a bunch of crazy drunk people creating a big situation there last 2
well,
weeks.
look,
of
it could be a lot of
Oktoberfest.
fun. Some of these countries are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I love London. London is a great place to visit. It's a great place to be. I get the policing there is top notch. The investigators there are top notch. That's one of my favorite countries.
Do you think that the shooting tests that they do, like what I've heard about in Germany or what they do in the U.S. Army, are as good as UK or there's other ones?
What do you mean the shooting?
How good or accurate shooting is, or how
Well, the
seriously
UK
it's taken
police
back?
don't carry firearms.
Oh, really?
No.
Really.
Yeah,
They just say stop, or I'll say stop
it
again.
works for the UK.
Really? Oh, wow. Well, I hear even in Vienna, what is it? 1 bullet per gun. So
I don't know about Vienna. I've never been there.
it's not going to get you too
That's
far.
my point. Is you have to adjust to what other countries are. If you want to go to Pakistan, it's a different place than going to the UK.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So in Pakistan, they do have armed police.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And in UK, they do not.
No. Well, there's units.
That
There's
have.
responsive units that have firearms,
Mm.
but the constable on patrol, which is where the word cop came from,
Mm.
comes from the UK, and they don't carry firearms to this day. They don't.
Really?
Yeah.
But in Germany, they do, right?
Germany, they do. Yeah.
Interesting. What about countries like Saudi Arabia?
I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
I don't
So
know.
it just varies.
It varies. Yeah.
it
Each
could be
country's
different.
different.
Oh, interesting. Is in America you have all these governments on top of each other. Is it like that overseas also, where you have towns and cities and states and federal all on top of each other?
In some countries, it is.
It is.
In some countries, like London has their own city police, and then the Scotland Yard, which is kind of, I don't like to compare them to the FBI, but it's kind of like the FBI. They're an investigative body for the UK.
They kind of
And then they
separate it
have,
to some degree.
and then they have the equivalent of, like MI5 is like the local CIA is, and then MI6 is the CIA that works outside of the country.
I mean, I know we're gonna dance around some interesting side subjects, but those suits, is there like an official suit for different like FBI members or Scotland Yard? Is there a particular outfit or suit that you get, like an exclusive Armani suit just for those guys?
No, I worked with the FBI for 4.5 years.
They're not
They
like
buy off the rack like we do.
Oh, really? It's not like special Armani,
No,
law
no.
enforcement brand.
No.
Really? Because they look
No.
usually really good.
Joe Bank works for them too.
Oh, really? Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's a Joe Banks version also. All right, that's really interesting. The reason I'm leading to is, this information that's out there that talks about predictive policing and how ultimately collecting all this data, allowing for predictive policing, means that the word artificial intelligence will be that the machine can start to make decisions based on the collected data.
Well, the terminology used is more of intelligence-driven policing.
Intelligence-driven
It's the
policing.
same thing you're talking about. We refer to it as intelligence-driven policing.
Okay.
And that's collecting data.
Yes.
To put it very simply, it's collecting criminal data, whether it be shootings, whether it be car thefts, whether it be rapes, whether it be robberies, collecting that data, kind of fine-tuning where the problems are,
Okay.
what part of the city or what part of the county you work in, and kind of using your resources to go to that area. I mean, it's high tech, but it's it's like common sense. If you have a car theft issue,
In that block,
why not
freaking-
want to know exactly where it's confined to, so you could put your resources there?
Sure.
And that pretty much works for gang activity, for whatever crime you want to drill down on.
Well, now, what they're saying with AI is that ultimately...
to give you a smaller example, it's like you and I know from Nassau County,
Yes.
the way they set up red light cameras, for instance, is by crunching data to find out where car accidents are.
True.
And that type of thing. So they don't just throw cameras up in godforsaken places that nobody's really going to... They put them in specific areas.
Yes, where it has the most effect to reduce the most accidents.
The most safety effect, right.
But I guess with AI, they're saying that at this point, instead of a team going out there, artificial intelligence will auto-dispatch a police officer or turn that area into different routes or, change the traffic patterns automatically without human intervention. Do we trust the machine to a point where all of this collection of data can now have automatic responses?
I think you need to explain automatic response.
Meaning that you fed all this data into this computer, and the programmer says that every time there's an accident on this block and of this kind of attributes, it's at night, you hear people complaining and calling, you automatically dispatch a police officer there. No one has to even do a dispatch. The artificial intelligence will know to automatically dispatch and expect paperwork to come in.
Well,
it's very likely to be like that.
As far as I know right now, we don't have that, but we have something similar to that. So if there's a condition like you're talking about, in the police world, we call it a condition, is from 11 to 1 o'clock in that area, the police department itself will dispatch a person or a car to that location
Yes.
from those hours because of that.
Yes.
It's the same theory you have, but it's done based on intelligence and data collected, and then it's ordered by somebody who studies that.
They're saying that artificial intelligence will make that process much faster, saving more lives instead of human intervention. Let's take a look at our quick article here.
Where am I looking?
It'll come up here in a moment. Let me pull this up here and have it ready. One moment. So this is our article from Washington Post, the never-ending quest to predict crime using artificial intelligence. Washington Post has some great articles. Always recommend them. This was written just on July 15th of this year. About 12 days ago. And it talks about the world of Minority Report. Do you remember seeing that movie, Minority Report?
I do not. No.
So in that movie, our actor was tapped into a universe where he was able, through the artificial intelligence, science fiction, predict what every criminal's going to do, where they're going to end up, and what's going on. So basically, that's where they're eliminating crime by predicting everything people could possibly do bad in the world. And obviously, it ends with a really good song, just saying. But interesting movie if you haven't seen it. I'm not going to spoil it, so that's all I'm going to say about it. But ultimately, a dystopian society where researchers have long chased the prospect of being able to predict crime before it ever happens. Literally change genetics, change the world around them so those crimes don't ever happen. Now, that's a far extreme, but as the U.S. faces rising rates of violent crime, other cyber crime, they are saying that going through artificial intelligence or automating these responses could have a 90% accuracy rate. So this is what they're trying to do. The algorithms define locations in major cities that it calculates have high likelihood of crime, homicides, burglaries, occurring next week. The software can evaluate how policing varies across neighborhoods on 8 major cities and across all these states, and ultimately say where resources need to go without the intervention of politicians or management or other police officers.
Well, what you're talking about is not a new phenomenon. Intelligence-driven policing has been around since the middle 90s when, if you remember, when CompStat was
What is, can you talk about what CompStat was?
CompStat is a very simple, I mean, when we got a new, from the NYPD, when we had a new commissioner in there, CompStat was nothing more than 2 things. 1, accountability, and 2, utilizing data that was stored, crime data that was stored, pin mapping it so you can concentrate on where these crimes have been committed and then dispatch your resources to those locations. We call it intelligence-driven policing. You can call it whatever you want, AI, intelligence-driven policing. It's the same exact thing. Not to get into politics, but it's very easy to know that, I shouldn't say it's easy, but it's not hard to calculate where crime is going to be, what days crimes happen, the reasons crimes happen. For instance, if there's what? Go ahead.
But if the computer responding to it as opposed to the traditional machine,
what's the machine?
Humans hearing about it, analyzing it, and then the computer making decisions live where, well, this particular block you go now, but a few hours later on that block, and the computer's like auto-tracking it with all this information. There's a couple of software vendors, Pedpol and Palantir, which have created software that law enforcement use to forecast crime. All right, so by building, feeding the data such as crime reports, all of this data that intelligent policing has put in, right? And first of all, they're saying that that's the big problem. We had on a previous show, collecting all of the accurate data to create predictive crime is the first piece of information that perceivably people are having problem with. Secondly, it's making decisions on that where they're saying the computer's going to make a better decision than these humans eyeballing this stuff.
Well, look, you can collect all the data you want, and I could talk specifically for the NYPD and Nassau County, to be honest with you. They're constantly evolving into collecting new ways to collect as much data as possible to predict what crimes are going to be.
Yes.
The issue becomes on reducing crimes is it's not only it's mostly part of it is predicting where it's going to be and make sure your resources there to prevent it. Whether or not that's done by a computer, which is always the data is always done through intelligence. It's always data brought in through but
right, it's collected data with a high level of accuracy,
and then it analyzes that our we're at the point right now where our computers analyze these crime trends, and they're able to tell us pretty much where these crimes are happening, pinpointed where you could put your resources. The issue is it's always going to be the point where you can, and I don't want to get political, but you can predict. You can pretty much through AI, if you want to call it that, predict
Yes.
where crime is going to be,
Yes.
and be there to stop it or be there to make sure that somebody's apprehended. There's another step to that, to reduce, as using AI to produce crime is great as long as the system is all in sync, meaning
all the pieces are there to give you the right answer, which I think could be a problem in some places not getting all the accurate data that you need to give a good thing. For example, in Chicago, right, the police used predictive policing software from the Illinois Institute of Technology to create a list of people most likely to be involved in a violent crime. So, they studied this and studied this. A study from RAND and subsequent investigations
I'm familiar with RAND, yeah.
right, showed that the software included every single person arrested or fingerprinted since 2013 on the list. So it's working.
Well,
isn't there some
I have to add to that
please?
because you can have all the data in the world and pinpoint who's going to commit crimes or not. You want to bring up Chicago? They had 65 people shot last weekend. So you might be gathering that information, but somebody might not be using it.
That's what I mean. So
Yeah.
doesn't the
And
AI?
I'm not here to be critical of any city,
Sure.
but if you have,
But let's take that away. Let the computer make the decision. Let the AI be programmed, and make those decisions instead of somebody not reacting the way they're supposed to. Or if they didn't react, it's right there on the computer.
we're getting into a whole nother area now because I'm not
Sure.
talking about policing reacting to it. I'm talking about I don't want to
Sure.
really get into it.
Sure. Predictive policing algorithms are not a crystal ball, like you're saying, ultimately. Senior operations researcher from RAND said, who helped audit the Chicago Police Department's use of predictive algorithms. How do you look at this? There was a couple of AI tests done over college students and college applications, and they've noticed those early tests 10, 11 years ago started to become swayed in how their results were coming out because they realized the people who are programming it are unfortunately putting their biases into that code. It almost happens naturally. So you need a large group of people, maybe the federal government or a whole overseas body to kind of make sure that that's straight across the board. Couldn't as easily be abused,
Has to be used properly also. We can't sidestep the thing is you can collect all the data you want, but you have to utilize the data to make it work. If you're not going to utilize it and you're going to put your resources where they should be, and then the next step is, look, I don't think you'll ever, I don't want to be pessimistic,
Sure.
I don't think you'll ever completely say crime is going to go away completely. We will never have another crime committed in the United States.
So
if we
a
use
minority report in 50 years where computers have calculated this kind of person is always going to be a criminal, bottle them in, is not in our future.
Well, I don't know how libertarians are going to go for that. How do you bottle somebody in because his profile says he's going to be a criminal?
Well, they're doing tests like this in that
They are,
way.
but how does anyone say Ed Notella is going to be, we have to bottle him up because he's got the tendency, because our AI tells us that he's going to be committing crimes.
Well, that's
Let's
where
stop
you're
him.
at. That's where you're at. The AI can take my profile, what I've done, and say, yeah, based on his diet, he's going to disappear by the time he's, 72. They're already making health predictions, and yes, they're making ultimately society predictions around me.
That could be, and I'm not.
Facebook apparently knows what I'm going to be doing over the next 20, 30 years from watching me and people like me. And you know what I mean?
So what are you suggesting? That you should be put away at an early age, this way you don't have that opportunity?
Well, I don't know what I'm saying because half the world, their Darwinism, eugenics has existed. That's one way of thinking.
Look what you're
for
talking.
society where none of that's important exists also. Where is the middle ground?
Well, the middle ground now, you could talk about in the future right now because we've evolved to what you're talking about in light years since the early 90s. But policing is policing, and you could predict crimes are going to happen in some case. Be there to make sure it doesn't happen, or you can be there after it happens, and to make sure it doesn't happen is the people that just committed that crime are punished appropriately. If that doesn't happen, which is what we're going through right now in this country, you can predict. Policing can predict right now pretty accurately where the problems are gonna be, and where they were in the past.
So some people feel that could be a percentage racially induced.
You're talking about profiling?
Yeah, profiles.
Well, look. Let me get into that for a second, because when you say profiling, people automatically think you're talking about maybe a minority group. Profiling is the same as intelligence-driven policing. So let's say, for argument's sake, I'm gonna try to be politically correct here and say hypothetically that methamphetamine is pretty much being used and manufactured by the white community. I'm just using a hypothetical. That is not based on somebody's race. That's based on data that we've collected from over the years.
Yes.
On.
But the victims or whatever the other side is saying, that could be profiling.
Well, you could call it what you want. I call it intelligence-driven policing. You know, I mean, if you could do that with anybody. If you want to study data, but you're going to be afraid to use that data because it might be perceived as being racial, well, then there's no reason to collect the data. You know, you got to take that out of the equation and say we're trying to reduce crime and make people safer to live. You can't use the fact that whatever the data shows you have to go with.
Sure.
I mean, and that's not a racial answer. That's
factual data.
That's an intelligence
result.
Data that we brought in. So you could use that across the board, right?
Well, exactly. And in my involvement with government is really interesting. A lot of people have their own opinions and don't look much deeper. Why is police driving around perceivably in one neighborhood more than the next? Well, there's more police activity there. One of the measurements is phone calls coming out from that neighborhood to the police department.
Well,
and the reaction by police. They're not there voluntarily.
Look, if you have a concentrated 4 blocks of violent crime. When I say violent crime, I mean shootings. And I'll bring up Chicago for a reason. There's a south side of Chicago, and I don't know that much about Chicago, but I keep up on police trends and crime trends. Yeah. If you have a 3 or 4 block radius where every weekend you have shootings there, and then on the other side of Chicago, where they've gone a year with one shooting, why would you put your resources to address violent crime into? You would I mean, forget about the demographics and forget about who lives there. You have to address the crime no matter who it is.
It's very logical, but you hear in the news how this is politicized in so many different ways, up and down.
But AI is never going to, in my opinion, AI is never going to
overcome that. Why not?
Well, in today's day and age, it's not.
Okay, in today's day and age, it's not. But AI would ultimately make the same decisions as what's happening today.
Of course.
There's no variation of results.
Let me ask you a
if you
question.
add AI.
Isn't the purpose of collecting data and having that analyzed in a computer to spit out where the issues are?
Yes.
Isn't that the most important thing?
Yes.
Right?
So you and I happen to be very honest people, and we look at it in a very honest way. There are some people misusing that information for personal gain, political reasons.
I'm sure there are.
Wouldn't AI regulate that? Wouldn't AI bring some of that cheating to light? or would AI not impact or locate any other
I don't
people
think
abusing the system?
I don't think there's any police commander that I know of that can't, if they're not worried about what they say politically, because I don't think politics should come into policing, although it does. I don't think there's anybody in the world, any commander that I've dealt with, police commander, that cannot articulate why he has certain manpower in certain areas.
Okay.
And that's based on, you can call it artificial intelligence, I call it intelligence-driven policing. It's the same thing.
The collection of data.
But if you don't utilize that data to try to bring crime, if you have burglaries in an area, right? Let's use Old Brookville, let's say, for argument's sake, very affluent area.
Okay.
If you have burglaries in the area from Friday and Saturday nights from 11 o'clock at night to 3 o'clock in the morning, where are you going to put your resources at that time?
So that makes a lot of sense. I guess why.
And then there's other ways. You have plate readers. You have a lot of different things that you could utilize for policing. But I'm just saying, it doesn't have to be manpower policing. Let's say, for argument's sake, and I'll give you an example. There's a burglary issue in Glen Head.
Okay.
Okay. There's two ways into Glen Head.
Okay.
So you put plate reader. You know what a plate reader is?
Yes, you know what's coming in and out, who's
you
driving.
You put a plate reader on both exits and entrances.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave the car sit there. And then at the end of the day, there's a burglary at 123 Main Street in Glen Head. You check every car that went in. Maybe you can zero in on, through AI or intelligent believing, what plate numbers come back that don't come back to that zip code.
Right, and start using
and then
scripts.
maybe that you run that person and it's perfectly legitimate. Maybe you run that person, see he's got a burglary history, and you can kind of narrow it down. That's intelligence-driven policing.
I think AI is going to say these are the folks most likely to create do this again or be these criminals.
Yeah, well,
look at all this data we've aggregated. These people born from here with this thing and this basic thing could most likely be criminals on an ongoing basis.
Well, look, we have...
just hang on one quick second, because as laws change and politicians change, all of a sudden the rule this way is completely that way. And what happens with the AI?
Look, I'm a simple person. You know what I mean? I'll use the data to be able to respond to what I need to respond to. But if you have... Again, there's ways, we've evolved so much in ways we can reduce crime and fight crime that the police, the DA, and the politicians all have their own role.
Yes.
And if that role isn't, if there's no synergy in that role, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
It's never going to work.
Yeah, but there's some areas where that does work better than other areas.
Right. But I think you can couple intelligence-driven policing or AI with a collaborative way
effort
where everybody sits down and explains why we're doing this and why we're doing that. We even have data that comes out that tells us who's being released from prison that committed 2 shootings and so that now we know, let's say for argument's sake, if there's a shooting in that area and Ed just got released from prison, well, let's make sure Ed wasn't in that area right there. I mean...
So what are they doing now? So they have this intelligent policing, people are going to jail and being released the next day. Yeah,
well, that's a whole other issue now. We've...
Isn't that good to some part where the criminals...
So you're asking my opinion?
Yes.
Okay. So alternatives to... You were talking about alternatives to incarceration.
Yes.
Which is bail reform. Okay, and I could speak to this very clearly because there are people that were being held in jail strictly because they were indigent. In other words, maybe they stole something out of CVS.
Right.
And their bail was set at $250. So they put him in jail. So when I was in the DA's office, I used to work closely with the sheriff to say, let's get a list of people that have bail under $500. And see how we can get them removed from jail, because it's not fair. These people are in jail for minor crimes because they don't have enough bail.
For how long a time? A couple days?
What?
Were they in jail for these minor crimes?
Some people were in there for months.
Months? Over
'cause they couldn't-
$250 fine? They couldn't
$250 bail.
bail.
not a
They
fine.
couldn't find
They didn't have.
$250.
So
Jesus.
bail reform was originally brought up in the state of New York because of that reason. You know, bail is set for two reasons. One, to make sure the person comes back to court,
Okay.
or two, he's a safety risk to the community.
Got it.
So what the state legislators did is they didn't use the thing where, you know, make certain crimes non-bailable. So meaning, like if you committed a petty larceny, meaning you stole diapers from CVS,
Right.
maybe that shouldn't be. But they went too far and made it where they took violent crimes and made them bail ineligible, meaning not even a judge could say you're a threat to society.
Got it. They went way too far.
So if
with
you
it.
let somebody out,
But they were going so far the other way. I mean, I can't imagine someone stealing $100 worth of stuff at CVS and sitting in months for jail because they can't find $250 in bail.
well, that was
Sounds unbelievable.
well, that was the whole reason for bail reform, but they took it too far, and I think even the governor and even the new mayor of New York City and maybe the DAs themselves have said we took this too far. We actually took the control out of if one judge sees the same person 3 times in 2 weeks for committing crimes,
Yes.
and still doesn't have the power to say, you know what, you're a threat to society right now. You're going to be in jail until your case is adjudicated. But that's not happening. It just happened the other day where that cop got assaulted in the city.
Wow.
That guy was
So what's the change? When's it coming? When are they doing
Well,
this?
it's got to be legislated. The legislators from New York changed it. So my point being is, you can, as a police department, you can utilize every tool you have, which is intelligence-driven policing or AI, to make sure that you not only prevent crime,
Yes.
but you also reduce it by making sure. Look, there's the amount of people that commit crimes is 2% of the population. So if you take that, like you said before, if you remove that 2% for
Yes.
constantly committing crimes,
Yes.
that's how you reduce crime. And it's a deterrent. But again, the conversation is about using AI, and that's what AI is used for.
I love where this conversation's going because in my head I sort of tied in, and media and other people have tied in the current situation of policing, what's happening in different neighborhoods, on the history of what happened to their races, in this direction and that direction, and it doesn't only happen in America.
Look, we're all
I grew
human
up with this in
beings.
Europe, but
We're all human
that's
beings.
overlaid on current, just normal police work. Well, the neighborhood's like that because 50 years ago they did this, and this is.
Yeah.
But there's still today's police work that has to be done, and people have to be safe.
Look, in today's world, speaking of computers, you can't hit rewind. And I say this all the time. You can't complain about what happened in the past. You only can move forward
Yes.
in a better way.
Yeah.
And AI allows us to do it. And it's been evolving for years in police working. Some places a little bit more advanced than others. And I'm prejudiced for the NYPD and the Nassau County because I work with both of them. But again, there's a collaborative effort that has to be there or it's not going to work. The DA's offices, and I'm not to be critical of DA's office, I'm not at all. I worked for one for 9 years.
Yes.
They have the same data as far as recidivism as the police department has.
Okay.
They know who the repeat offender is, and it's all captured in data.
So you believe these bail laws are going to alter, where if a judge ultimately sees somebody once or twice or 3 times, it won't be get out of jail anymore.
I think it has to.
It has to at some
I think
point.
there's an appropriate part of bail reform and there's an inappropriate part of bail reform. I think we need to draw that line, figure out what that line is. And if they don't, look, crime is up everywhere. Crime is up everywhere.
That's pretty scary. I mean, if you look at cities in California, people living in droves. Families don't necessarily feel as comfortable raising their kids there as some other
Well, there's a
areas.
lot of different reasons why people leave certain areas. Could be taxes. It could be
Sure.
because it'd be the price of living in a certain
But crime has clearly gone up in the city, so
Oh, of course it has. I mean, homelessness is a big problem.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, really interesting stuff here. We've got a bunch of stuff to go over, but we're just chatting. If anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in and throw some questions at us. I just want to, again, just overlay the fact that current police work and what people say is why this is happening are two different problems.
look,
You
I'm
know?
not being. I want to make sure everybody understands this. I'm not being critical of any one particular area. I'm just
Sure,
saying
exactly.
is, if everybody's got their educated opinion on how to fix things, I just don't think everybody gets together and tries to figure out a solution that works for everyone.
It sounds like artificial intelligence or growing to that could have really good positive results. If intelligent police work is already having a good effect, it's the positive next step. The problem is with cybercrime, how do you get hacked and somebody changes the rules on you?
That's your lane.
You know, I
But
mean,
I could tell you in the 90s when CompStat came about, and CompStat was about intelligence-driven policing, mapping out crimes.
yes,
Crime was brought down to its knees.
it was so effective.
It was so effective. I mean, we went for 1993, for argument's sake, or 92, we had 2,200 murders, over 2,200 murders in the city.
Yeah,
Fast forward to 2000 and, I don't know, I'm guessing 2010,
yes.
and we're down to less than 300.
Wow,
How
that's
does
a huge.
How does that happen? How does that happen?
So why was the city that way? I mean, when I moved to America in the mid '80s, the city was
I can tell
so
you-
full of crime. Cops were afraid to be in Astoria.
Because this is that's a good question. Police departments were reactive back then, not proactive. So intelligence-driven policing made police departments be reactive. I mean, be proactive. Okay, we know where the crime is now. Let's address it before it happens. Before it was, you wait for a crime to happen and then you respond to it. It's
Gotcha.
a big difference between reactive and proactive.
When did that shift? When did you see that happen?
I saw that shift. I don't remember exactly when, but when Commissioner Bratton came in with his idea, I think it was back in the middle '90s, maybe. And it wasn't only the intelligence-driven policing, but he made everybody accountable for their responsibility. So let's say, for argument's sake, if you were a commanding officer in a precinct, your precinct was you were responsible for the crime in your precinct.
God.
Within that precinct, if you were a sector car that was responsible for 4 blocks
Yeah.
of responding to, you were responsible for those 4 blocks.
Yeah.
If something
your
happened
territory.
If something happened in there, you had to answer to it. If you were at a foot post on this corner, you were responsible for that corner, and you were answerable to it. That's what was lacking prior to CompStat. CompStat made people not only responsible, but making
Be
sure
proactive and gather
if
data.
you have a
and
crime
things like
pattern, how are you going to fix it?
that. Got it. Were you around when crack was big?
Yeah, that was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Really?
Yeah,
What was it like when crack was big?
that was just was crazy,
Yeah.
crazy.
How
Crime
did
was
it
rampant.
become so
You weren't
available?
around when people had those signs in the cars that said "There's no radio in this car" because they didn't want anybody breaking their window to steal a radio.
Why did crack become so popular? Why was it such a hot item?
That's a good question. It was a cheaper cocaine.
Why was cocaine such a hot item?
I thought cocaine was more of a upscale drug.
Upscale for
People had money.
for going to the disco, and then right dancing at the disco.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. I imagine these disco guys doing all.
Look, I'm just guessing.
So
about
crack was the cheaper alternative to
that. Right.
cocaine.
Crack went over. Like when it came out in, I think it was the late 80s. It was just, it spread like wildfire.
And what about amphetamines? Was that a big abusive thing?
I don't think so.
No. Interesting. But crack and cocaine
Crack was the golden the door that opened the golden gate to crime. it spread so quickly.
Now, there's a famous cook who went to the jungle and cooked his own cocaine on a cooking show that he did. And it's terrible. God forbid you put that in your face. That's made with gasoline and some really crazy
You're talking
stuff.
about methamphetamine?
Yeah, cocaine is made with some really crazy stuff. You know what I mean? You don't want that in your body.
No.
People were doing it. All the wealthy people were doing it.
Yeah.
And what about
see,
heroin?
There you go. There's a question that you have. Like, if cocaine is a rich man's drug, that's not being
That's not being stereotypical.
It's not. It's just saying that's where it is.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then the crack was the cheap alternative for the low neighborhood.
I'm not being.
So the drugs are available for every class. You got the cocaine, you got the crack,
and look,
and you got a couple people sober.
Intelligence tells you where it is and where it's being sold and who's using it. It's not guesswork. That's my point about being politically correct.
Yes.
Politically correct it shouldn't have anything to do with. Look, I'm not naive enough to say it doesn't, but it shouldn't have anything to do with crime because crime is crime. You can't make crime move to an area that people want it to move to.
Right.
It is where it is.
It is where it is. Interesting. So how about heroin and Vietnam War? That was just as exciting for those guys.
Before I was in the police department.
Yeah, but you must have heard about the days of heroin and all those soldiers.
Of course, but again, back then heroin. That's another good point. Back then heroin was you always thought of heroin in Alphabet City in Lower Manhattan, where all these people were junkies with their head bouncing off the ground because they couldn't stand up straight.
Yeah.
And then now it evolved into when oxycodone and painkillers came out, it became a drug of everybody because people got hooked on oxycodone. They couldn't afford $60 a pill,
right?
And the substitute for that was heroin.
Right, exactly. Wow. Well, listen, Chuck, we're just chatting away here. Thank you for joining the show. I'd like to leave this open to have you back and talk more stuff. I'm glad I didn't overstep my boundary with wacky questions. I'm from Europe, so I love comparing European law to what's going on here, especially in cyber, Chuck. You know that what's happening in Europe with cyber law is very different than America, and it's very interesting, you know. But thanks for another episode of Cyber Masters. Hope to have Chuck back to talk about more stuff, especially as more of these AI tests are done in these governments. Maybe we could talk about it, you know, and see what the results are and what they're doing with that stuff.
Be happy to.
So thank you for being so open to technology. It's folks like you that change the world. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday, the next show. More exciting guests. See you next time.